Hello and welcome or welcome back to the Import Export Hub channel, everybody. Bas Bogdan here, your host for the next couple of minutes. Thanks for joining in. I hope that everybody is doing great. And as usual, guys, without practically begging you to hit those small vanity buttons below this video, allow me to cover a topic which is getting a lot of attention lately. And I am talking about the minimis threshold. And guys, very briefly, I will start with what it means, how the threshold varies from country to country, the benefits and the drawbacks associated with it, and towards the end of the video, I will briefly cover what the future holds, at least in the European Union. But my guess is that this will be also implemented by the United States as well, maybe with some small tweaks. So with this framework in mind, let's see what de minimis is. And basically, it's a Latin phrase that means the law cares not for small things. And in international trade, it refers to a value threshold below which goods are exempt from customs duties and or taxes. So basically, the idea behind de minimis is that the administrative costs of, I don't know, collecting the duties on low value items would outweigh the revenue generated. As you can expect, this threshold varies from country to country, and here are some examples. We have the United States of America, who has a threshold of just $800. Canada and Mexico both have a threshold of $20. The European Union has a threshold of around $150, while China has a threshold of $10. And I don't know, while having a high threshold could be beneficial for consumers who can purchase low value goods from abroad without having to pay duties or taxes, it can also be a challenge for domestic businesses which may face competition from cheaper imports, but this is another story. And it's currently under debate both in the US and the European Union. And speaking of United States, guys, let's take a look at the timeline for the de minimis threshold in the United States. And as you can see, it increased over time. We have some $5 in 1938, which is the equivalent of $110 today. Then in 1994, it was increased to $200, and then we have 2016, when the threshold was increased once again to the current value of $800 by the Trade Facilitation and Trade Enforcement Act. And as expected, this increase has led to a surge in the number of de minimis packages entering the United States. And it seems that in 2023, we have some 1 billion de minimis packages who entered the United States. And guys, I will let you guess from where the majority of these packages arrived. And if you said China, you are right. And in this slide, I've prepared a nice chart with data coming from the US Department of Trade, in which we see the values of low value imports. We don't have the volumes, and basically China is by far the number one origin country of low value imports, with some $4.67 billion in 2023, much higher than the values coming from the other two NAFTA 2.0 members, so Mexico or Canada. So I've shown you the current threshold and the values of low value imports from China, and now let's take a look at who is benefiting supposedly from this de minimis threshold. And basically there are a number of stakeholders who are benefiting. First, we have the consumers who benefit from lower prices on imported goods. Then we have the small businesses who can find it easier to import low value goods. And then we have the e-commerce companies who can ship goods without worrying about custom duties or taxes. And this is where Alibaba, Temu, Shein, and the like are taking advantage, especially in the United States, given the big threshold. On the other side, one could argue that the increased competition from cheaper imports can hurt domestic businesses, of course, that import products wholesale and have to pay for customs and taxes, not to talk about the lost tax revenue by the authorities. And here, guys, we have to give it to the lobbying institutions, both in the United States and the European Union, who evidently want to keep a high de minimis threshold. And we have the e-commerce companies who are also benefiting, who supposedly want a streamlined customs process, as I said earlier. Then we have the consumer groups who may argue that a high de minimis threshold allows access to a wider variety of goods. And let's not forget, of course, the parcel carriers. Now, from opensecrets.org, because I was speaking about lobbying earlier, I've managed to find this chart, and we see how in 2023, Shane Technology managed to allocate some $2 million for their lobbying activities in the United States. Unfortunately, I couldn't get my hands on the budget for the EU lobbying activities, and I found just the registration on the EU Transparency Register. But it's clear the stakes obviously are huge. If you think about it, we have companies who are listed on the stock exchange, others are planning the IPO. So you have to anticipate how things will evolve. So it's understandable to have some lobbying activities. But unfortunately for these e-commerce companies, this is changing, at least in the European Union, as the e-commerce growth creates difficulties for collecting duties on these small shipments. Preventing fraud, like, I don't know, undervaluing or splitting the shipments. And last but not least, we have to maintain a level playing field for the EU businesses. So, guys, with these three challenges in mind, the EU legislators came out with a solution which won't please the likes of Temu, Shein, or Alibaba. And basically, from 2028, the European Union will eliminate the current €150 exemption for goods entering the European Union. Supposedly, it will simplify customs processes and close some of the loopholes. And it will implement a bucketing system similar to the one Canada is using, that basically will categorize goods into 5 buckets with fixed duty rates between 0 and 17%. Now, if you ask me, for this to work, at least for the European Union, the treaty between the European Union and Turkey has to be revised. Otherwise, Shein, Alibaba, or Temu will create export gateways in Turkey in order to circumvent this measure. As for the United States, things are more complicated. As I've said earlier, we have companies listed on the stock exchange or, I don't know, planning an IPO. But this doesn't mean that the US won't make any step in this direction. And my guess is that this de minimis threshold, or Section 3.321, for those of you familiar with this matter, is a huge, huge bargaining chip in relation with China. At least this is how I see the things right now. The minimis threshold is used as a geopolitical tool, at least in what concerns US-China relations. Anyways, guys, time will tell how things will evolve for sure. Legislation relating to e-commerce and cross-border commerce has to be updated. The European Union, as I've said, is already taking some measure. And my educated guess is telling me that the United States will follow suit, not now, but in a couple of years. And guys, with this being said, that's it for today. I hope I've managed to provide you with some useful information. Thank me by hitting those small vanity buttons below this video. And as usual, until next time, keep your business safe. Thanks.